Welcome to the Vertical Cafe podcast, where community connects through coffee and conversation.
Laura Debatz, thank you for being on the Vertical Cafe podcast. Thank you for taking your time out of your busy day and meeting with us here. To my right, filling in the shoes, the big shoes of Ian Campbell is Mario.
I will never fill those shoes. Ian did such a fantastic job.
He is great. We deeply miss him. Yeah. Yes.
My friends do call me Mario on occasion, but it's
actually Al
Ferreira.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. I affectionately call you Alf.
Thank you. Yeah, it just again, my Alf has been around since 1972. Not the TV show. It's just my initials. And one of my friends had a lisp, and that's how he pronounced my name, Alf.
Aren't those the best nicknames and memories?
They are.
Yeah.
They just last forever.
Yeah.
So, and having spent time in camp, I have some camp nicknames as well. So, but we're here to talk about the lovely Laura Larson Debatz, right?
It's
Larson.
true. It's true.
Yeah.
Larson,
So,
yeah.
Yeah, I did a little research ahead of time. So,
You did? Okay.
Yeah. So it's called Facebook stalking.
Yeah.
So
Well, good thing I changed it to professional dashboard instead of just personal.
Yes. This is good. This is good.
Well, Laura, again, thanks for coming. Just before we get into some of the things that you do, let's talk about who you are, kind of your beginnings, your genesis of life, where you're from, and how you ended up in the village of Warsaw.
Wow, what a journey that's going to be. Okay, so a little bit of storytelling background here. I think it's genetic. I'm learning the older I get and the more time I spend with my dad. It definitely is part of his lineage. So I actually grew up in a metropolis outside of Albany, New York, in Troy, New York. And I was there basically birth to about 18. A lot of kids in my graduating class. It's actually home of Uncle Sam. Most people don't realize that, but he actually was a real human, not just somebody made up. And
did he wear the hat as well? He did.
Yeah. He's actually, we just did a little road trip for my work, and we stopped on the way because sometimes they want to know, like, how did we get this city girl in the middle of the country? And so we stopped to see the monument down on the Hudson River in Troy, which is kind of cool. He actually wasn't from Troy, but that's where he spent a lot of his time, and so that's where it was developed. So that's kind of cool.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So I left Troy to go to Cobleskill, New York, to pursue veterinary science. I was planning to be a veterinarian because I didn't really, hard to believe, like humans at that time. I thought animals were a little nicer and unconditionally loving, and so I went out to Cobleskill. It was a tech school, and the tech school afforded me some hands-on experience that I wouldn't get if I was just a pre-vet student. And I fell in love with barn duty. That was my favorite class. And I noticed that the culture of the rural kids was a little bit more my vibe when it came to like everyday communication. So I kind of fell in love with that, transferred to Cornell on what they call a 2+2, and got major culture shock when I got to Cornell. Wow. Just the intellectual piece. I would say I was a smart student if I worked hard, but at that school, they got to kind of separate you from the genius to the just plain smart. So it was a little bit like the Marines, I figure. Like, they strip you down, and then you wonder, what are you doing here, and how come you're paying for this education? So, it was actually kind of a very dark time for me. And most people see me as a very optimistic, encouraging, joy-spreading human being, but if you had met me during that time, you probably wouldn't have thought so. So I did survive that a little while. And about my second semester at Cornell, I actually joined a co-ed agricultural fraternity, and that was my group. And so while I was in there, I got to find space and community and encouragement, and that became my network. And so many times I wish I could tell that to young people, because I'm so passionate about young people, that your network is not developed in the easy parts of your life most of the time. It's developed in the harder parts. So that's kind of what happened. I got to my senior year at Cornell, and they had this class in the animal science curriculum that said, I'm not going to vet school, so now what? And I realized I was getting D's in my lectures and A's in my labs, that I definitely was better hands-on learning, and that's probably why Cobleskill was so good. And I had a guest speaker every week that came in and said, here's what I did with my animal science degree if I didn't go to vet school. And my friends that were brilliant, and two of them specifically from that co-ed fraternity who are veterinarians now, went on and they were having trouble getting in. And I was like, if they're having trouble getting in, I got to have a plan B, C, D here. So I took a class on the art of teaching, basically, and worked in an urban outreach program in Ithaca, New York, and fell in love with doing agricultural literacy in an after-school program in the hood of Ithaca, where there was a housing, kind of a subsidized housing complex, and the gentleman didn't want the kids coming home and getting into mischief, so he donated one of the townhouses for an after-school program. And Cornell Cooperative Extension was the partnership, and I was paid by them, and then I did that, and my grades went from like a 2.5 to like a 3.8. Nice. And I was like, that's what I'm good at. There it is. And so then I decided to take a semester off and then finish my master's in education there to be a high school ag educator, which is what I did. And then I went to Connecticut to teach ag mechanics because it was the only teaching position open at the time that I graduated. And that was a hoot. That's where I learned how to weld. And then I left there and couldn't get a job. And wound up in cooperative extension in Shenango County for a little while as a 4-H educator. And then I student taught out here at Letchworth. And my amazing colleague, Jeffrey Perry, who is at Cornell now, just the best guy. He's like the Al of the ag teaching world. Gosh. Yeah, he totally is.
That's a lot to live up to.
It's he is. You guys are similar. And so he said, I never wanted a second teacher. I totally want a second teacher. And so we petitioned for that, and I couldn't get the full-time teaching position at Letchworth. They wouldn't come up with the funding for it, but they would fund half biology, half ag. So I almost failed out of biology in high school. And by the time I finished my Cornell master's degree, I had so much biology credit, you can't even imagine. And so I was a bad test taker. So I kept failing the teacher subject content test in order to be a bio teacher, but I could prove I knew it, but I couldn't test it.
And sometimes we teach best what we most need to learn.
Totally. And so if it hadn't have been that I wanted that ag teaching position so bad at Letchworth, I would never have become a bio teacher, but it was the only way I could get the job. And so that's what brought me out here. So I wound up in Warsaw. My first place to live was here, and it was so that I could teach full-time at Letchworth.
Oh, really? Yeah. So what year was that you were student teaching at Letchworth?
1997.
97, wow.
Yeah, I've been teaching since 94. Tell that to kids today, it sounds like 1894.
Yes, I know it. Yeah, right.
Anything before 2000 is
their eyes get so big. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned your dad and story. Clearly, you're a great storyteller, and you get those skills from your dad. There was some military family as well?
Yeah. Most of my family is military, actually. My dad was Navy and served in Vietnam for a short time, got out, and then did Army National Guard for over 30 years, and he did serve during 9/11. He was 52 years old, and he got called up, and he went and did that proudly. I questioned him about that. I was like, Dad, you're 52. And he was like, Laura, I've waited all my life to serve this country, and my men have been in training this entire time. There's no way I'm sending them with somebody else. I will be their lead. And so he did do that for 9/11 for a while, and
now, his Navy career, did that move your family around, or was it strictly Troy?
No. My parents weren't married yet when he served in the Navy. Mm-hmm. He came home. They got married. Then he did I don't even know how long, honestly, like maybe a small stint with Navy National Guard, and then transferred his time into Army. And so he would have his once a month training he had to go to, and then he would be away for a week at a time during the summer. Mm-hmm. My parents divorced when I was a vulnerable 13. So right, transitioning into middle school. So,
gotcha.
Yeah.
And did you have siblings at all? Brothers, sisters?
biological and non-biological both. So I have a biological brother. I'm the oldest. My brother is 5.5 years younger than me, so he often acts like I'm mom. I have a sister 15 years younger than me, a half sister, and then I have a stepbrother. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And you were 13 when your parents separated.
Yeah.
And that must have been hard to process, right? Or
it wasn't
did
the
you see it?
greatest. Yeah, it wasn't the greatest. It definitely, thank goodness for adult support, which I am a huge promoter of. Definitely was a latchkey kid. I mean, the world was way different when we were all young than it is today.
Can you help? I know a lot of younger folks don't know what a latchkey kid is.
Okay.
Could you define that for us?
Yeah, so a latchkey kid means basically at 8 years old, I could be the adult.
Right.
And so I was trusted to be the adult. And I was trusted because you had fear if you didn't do what you were supposed to do, the world would end.
Right.
And there was a healthy respect there. And I actually, my mom had a lot of medical issues, mental health medical issues at the time. And I was the oldest. And so my dad was the oldest of 8 kids, and he knew how to speak oldest. And so latchkey meant when he was at work, if mom was not well, I was in charge, and so that's part of why my brother does that. So I came and went in and out of the house as if I was an adult with the expectation to do chores, do my homework, maybe make dinner if it was expected, and clean up and put myself to bed at a reasonable time.
Now, did that, when you look back on that, do you feel like you missed out on some of your childhood at all?
No. That's a great question. I actually don't think that I like the thought of thinking in regret, because I really believe that what was difficult for me, my faith has taught me God used it for something better. And so was it a little bit challenging when I was a kid? Sure, it was challenging, but it was expected.
Mm-hmm.
And so you did what was expected. And I can remember some moments where, like, if I wanted to go play, they were like, take your brother. And my friends were like, why do you have that guy again?
Yeah.
So I hung out with girls, so we played house. Like, some of them had like built-in houses in their backyard, doll houses kind of, so to speak, but life-size.
Sure.
And so he would just wind up having to be the baby in the bassinet, and he'd kind of be sick of that. But, it was like, if I was going to have friends, it included him, so that's kind of how it was. It wound up being a little bit different because mom and dad divorced after that point, so I didn't have full responsibility of him because he actually went to live with dad. So he wound up a little latchkey on the other end too.
Gotcha.
But yeah.
And so both your parents, did they remarry?
No, my mother never did.
Okay.
I kind of threatened her, actually. I was like, you're all that in a bag of chips all by yourself. I don't need to. So my dad did. He was recently lost my stepmom. And they were married for 33 years. In 1998, they married. Okay. 1999. So, yeah. Okay. Yeah, we loved her.
Some of those lessons that you learned through that adversity, are there pieces that you see essential to who you are now?
I can't imagine me without them. And honestly, I didn't know any different. And I didn't realize that's what helped to build who I am until my friends would say to me in the entrepreneur world, we don't have one of those rags to riches stories like yours. And I was like, what are you talking about? And they were like, no, we had normal family lives. We had normal, situations. There wasn't a ton of divorced people back then. It became more popular as I would say, as the 80s went on, the 90s went on, it became more common. My parents were doing it kind of at a time where maybe people were thinking about doing it. And so my friends just always acknowledged that there was something different. And I kept trying to figure out, like, why? Like, what is it that I have in resilience or perseverance? And why do I have it? And honestly, that's part of it. But my dad was a marathon runner. And so he was like the ultimate habit stacker before that even existed. And so he would say, like, come on, we're going to go for a run. And I'd be like, seriously, can I have another piece of toast? It was not at all my thing. And I hate running to this day. In fact, I will do any exercise other than running. But he would hook up our 2 mutt dogs to a sled with runners on it in the winter. And my brother would get to sit on the sled and he would mush the dogs and I would have to run next to him.
Okay.
And I can remember doing it because he was in charge of firing the men who didn't meet their physical fitness requirements. And so he wanted to be sure to do what was expected and then some, so they couldn't say, you don't know what it's like if to meet these requirements, because that's not what you do. And he might have been speaking to men that were 20 years younger than him. So he wanted to make sure that he could keep up. And so he would say to me, I can remember pain in my side, and I'd be running and I'd be like, Dad, seriously, can we just be done now? And he'd say, no pain, no gain. No pain, it'll pass. That pain you're feeling, it's temporary. It's going to go away. So I had really good mind coaching from him, and we were an avid Rocky Balboa family, okay? So to this day, if I got to get fired up, Eye of the Tiger is going on in my listening setup. So,
wow,
yeah.
Fantastic. You talked a little bit earlier about not being a people person, being more of an animal person. So I in my Facebook stalking of you and other social media, you are always smiling and you're always with somebody, and so I can't imagine you not being a people person. Was there a trigger point? What flipped that switch for you?
That's a really great question. I think confidence. It was in the making. It was maybe there. So recently, I met online virtually on Facebook Messenger with a girl from my childhood. And you'd think with 450 kids in your graduating class, you'd maybe have a few more relationships, right? Because the kids here at Warsaw are always complaining about the fact that, there's only 60 of us or whatever. And I'm like, it's like great and not great at the same time. Well, 450, there ought to have been plenty of friends to go around. I was in band. And so my friends were band, and we were a competitive band. We marched in New York City on St. Patrick's Day. And, but I only had like 5 close friends. And to be honest with you, I tell this to my kids all the time. This is why it's so important. Like, I grew up in a metropolis where there was culture. Skin tone colors were varied from the time I was born. And most of my friends were Black because the white kids were mean. And so I had like 2 white friends. And my friend Shelly and I just recently did a virtual appointment, and we hadn't caught up in like 30 years. And she said, before you do anything with this whole facial thing we're going to do, she said, I have to say something to you. And it relates to your question. She said, I was so happy to see that you are doing Mary Kay. And I said, why? And she said, I couldn't figure out how you were going to make that animal thing work. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, you were always a people person. And I said, what are you talking about? And she said, you always connected everybody. You were a connector. I said, Shelly, it was never celebrated. Nobody ever acted like it was ever something that was helpful. It always seemed to be hindering. And so I thought, forget this. Like, at least, if these people can't be happy or it's not working, then I'm just going to do. So when did it shift? I guess I just feel like when I decided to just be my own person and work in my giftings before I realized that's what I was doing, it was probably in my senior year of Cornell that I started to build that level of confidence. And I ran for an office. I was actually the pledge educator. I was in charge of raising up the next set of recruits, so to speak. And helping them brought me joy, and encouraging them and letting them know that even in the darkest of times, and there was definitely a depression in this time frame, I never smiled for a photograph until my senior year in that college. And it was a gentleman that was in my fraternity. We lined up our photos for this composite photo. And he said, which one are you going to pick? And I said, I think that one. And there was like 6 that were the same with no smile and one that wasn't. And he said, really? And I said, yeah, that's the only one I like. And I said, why? Which one do you like? And he pointed at the only one where I had a smile on my face, a real one. Mm-hmm. And he said, that's what I think of when I think of you. So it was this light bulb moment that somehow that baggage I was carrying that I didn't know I was carrying about things not really being what I wanted them to be didn't relate anymore. And that, I think, was the beginning of that. And I just wanted to leave everything better than I found it. I didn't want to be, this is heavy stuff, Heavy question, Al. Heavy question. So if we're really at the root of this, the root is people were taking their lives at my college because they didn't have 4.3 averages. They only had 4.1. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, does anybody even care who I am? Because I'm not nearly as smart as these people. I'm not sure I belong here. I don't think I fit in. These kids are all rich. They drive, no offense, BMWs. I'm driving a Ford Aries K car with holes in it,
I remember the K car. I had 2 K cars.
Oh my.
I had my parents' leftover wagon K car.
Yes.
And then I had the box brown K car, 4-door.
Correct.
It was amazing.
Mine was white. It looked like cancer was on
gosh.
it. But my dad helped me with that. That's another
and
story.
I lost the muffler. It was the worst thing when I was
Yeah, me
pulling up
too.
to school.
Me too.
I was so embarrassed.
I think they're after 300 miles, the K car just drops the muffler. I think that's
Is that the key?
factory.
Yeah.
I do want you to know I drove it on 3 cylinders for a whole year.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, so definitely it was worth the money paid for. Thanks,
Sorry for
Dad.
the sidetrack.
Yeah, no,
Okay,
so that was good. I appreciate
Yes,
that.
yes.
And so that was another piece of it that I was like, okay, these, how people say, hi, how are you? Hey, how are you? You're just passing?
Yeah.
Yeah. I will never say that to you, ever. Because all I was thinking is, what if I say, hi, how are you? And I read about them in the paper the next day. No, people don't think that deeply, but I was thinking that deeply. And I thought, I'll never say it. So if you're ever with me, you won't hear me say that. You'll hear me say, what's going on? Because if somebody tells me what's going on, it gives me insight into where they are.
I think that's wonderful. You get a lot of people that ask you, how are you? But they really don't care.
No, they don't.
And they're not even going to listen to you, really, because I remember one time I was at church and the pastor passed by me and he goes, how you doing? And I said, you really don't have time for me to answer that question. I know you care. It's there, but that's just something that we say to people. How are you?
Yeah.
And so that's great. I like that. So you say, instead of how are you, what's going on?
What's going on?
That could be a loaded question as well. So you better have time to listen when you ask that, right?
Yeah, correct.
So if you know you don't have time, are you going to ask?
I'll say intuitively. That's a great question. I try to lean into intuition. And so I kind of size up the body language ahead of time. And it's funny, but I found if you wear really obnoxiously bright pink lipstick or red, whoever's not having a good day just doesn't even approach you. They're intimidated by my lipstick color. If I wear something more like I have on today, I'm going to get a lot more approaching because it's more relatable.
Sure.
And so if I size up what I'm looking at and I've got time, I'm asking.
Sure.
And if I don't, I'm going to say, I'm so happy to see you. I'm in a hurry. I want to give you a hug. And I'm going to catch up with you later. I'm going to message you.
Yeah.
Because I can sense it.
Yeah.
So
I think about all our interactions and probably 7 or 8 years that I've been aware of you and know you here in the community. And I always felt that you were very deliberate about your time in asking what's going on for me. So that's a great lesson. I just love it. It's clear that Simon Sinek wrote the book Find Your Why. It's clear that you found your why a long time ago, probably when that transition happened for you at the end of school. Is there in your quiet moments as you reflect on your work and all of those different things? What's had a lasting impact? What's consistently happened, or that you do, that you continue to do to this day?
Well, now I collect people. Yeah, I think people are just the most amazing gift that God could have ever given to us, even the difficult ones, maybe even especially the difficult ones. And I had some quiet time today, actually. I purposely planned it. No sound, no music. I love music, and especially podcasts in the shower. Today I was just like, I'm just gonna do nothing. I'm going to do the silent thing. And in thinking about the collection of people, I was just really thinking about how much my life has been enriched through the people that have been brought into my life, and what I've learned from those people, I consider to be my toolbox. And so every time I have an interaction with someone, I try to take the best from them and see if I can add it to my toolbox, because I feel like it's going to be needed. Someday someone's going to need that. And so I just put it in my toolbox and kind of mark it as like for later. And then God will usually create an opportunity where I can affirm someone. Encouragement is really my tool. That's my tool. I've been deep, dark, and not wanting to be on the earth. And then I didn't want to do that to somebody else. And I just thought it's temporary. These pains we go through, they're temporary. Tough times don't last, but tough people do. Dr. Schuler wrote a book, and when we went through some extreme financial difficulty, when President Obama came over, my husband was running a garage in town, and the government bought out GM from their debt. And when they did that, the average middle class person or above went and got a new car with a warranty on it. And that warranty meant that you were going to go back to GM, so that's how they pay back their debt. You would go get your car fixed at the dealership. My husband was a mechanic. And so who could afford to fix their cars? All the people with the warranties, and the ones who needed their cars fixed couldn't afford to. And during that time was a real strain on us as a family, because we were both self-employed at the time. And I learned through that time, from all of that training of resilience, that this is just a season. And if I'm willing to trust, the end outcome will be a result of my effort. So control what I can control.
Sure.
And I met people through that time that blessed me, that didn't even know I was having a struggle, and I thought, oh, this is so fun. It's like a package and a puzzle. Like, who are you going to bring me today? And how is that going to connect for somebody else's life? So
that's great. Just real quick, Al, you've mentioned God a few times, and most of the people in the community who know you know that that's part of who you are, your faith. You are a Christian. And so did you grow up in a Christian home? How did that all work for you?
I grew up in a home that believed in God.
Okay.
I not as I would say I am today. I grew up Catholic, and I'm very proud of my Catholic faith. My grandma was unapologetic about making sure that we were raised. My parents were not. They had both walked away from their faith. And my grandma literally would call me on the phone on Sunday and say, Laura, what are you doing? And I'd say, watching cartoons. And she'd say, what day is it? And I'd say, Grandma, it's Sunday. And she'd say, and what time is Mass? It's at 10:30. And she said, and how good are you at this moment to get out of the house with your brother and go to Mass? And I said, I'm not ready. And she'd say, well, that's what I was thinking. So I'm going to hang up the phone. I know you know what to do to get ready for Mass. Go get your brother ready and walk to church. And so I had that expectation, and we did that. I didn't find my faith till I was brand new to Warsaw when I found my faith. Okay. It was at a Christian concert, that a friend from Cornell was relentless. She wanted me to have a walk with the Lord so bad. She would just invite me to every concert, no matter what it was. And this one happened to hit. And so I finally, that was it for me. That's when it began, really. So that would be about 2001.
Okay. Very good.
That's a great journey.
Yeah.
So you're known for that, but also you're known for Mary Kay Cosmetics.
Yeah.
Right? You are the Mary Kay lady in Warsaw.
Tell us a little bit about the pink life.
Yeah. The pink life, yes. The pink Cadillac.
Joy. So another gift, right? Like, so if I'm going to do that business, that's all humans, right? Like, and so that showed me, wow, I can literally encourage people every day with what I do. So what do? I teach people how to wash their face. I hope that I leave a little bit of encouragement along the way. And I love what I do. I came into Mary Kay through Cornell. So I met my Mary Kay consultant there at a bridal show. And I didn't wear any makeup, and I didn't wash my face. And it showed. And there was no filters on our cameras back then, so you're going to pay $2,000 for a bridal package. whatever your face is. And I knew it needed to get fixed. And so I had very blemish prone skin, met the Mary Kay lady. She tolerated me because I was a bit of a heckler and didn't like girls, and I definitely didn't like people. So she helped me clear up my skin. And I fell in love with her because she genuinely was kind to me, even if I was difficult with her, and I was. And so that's how I got started using the product. And then she was unrelenting about saying she thought I'd be great as a Mary Kay consultant. And I said, I didn't go to college for 6 years to sell lipstick. And she said, well, you don't wear it. And I said, okay. And she goes, and I think you'd be great at it. Just think about it. I'll ask you again another time. And so I got my job teaching here. And I called her and said, I need to stock up on some stuff. I got my dream job. I'm moving out to Western New York, and there was no internet back then, Rod. Right. And so I said, I just need some stuff because I obviously can't be without this moisturizer and cleanser, And she was like, hey, what do you think about doing this? And I was like, oh, come on, Kathy, seriously. And she was like, Laura, just listen. So I listened to some information. And then I got annoyed because it was about a teacher who quit her job to do Mary Kay. And I said, and then it flipped over and it said I could get a discount on the product I loved. And I thought, well, that's worth listening to. So I did say yes 1 week before I moved here and didn't know anybody but my now ex-relationships family. So
that's quite the transition from having your master's degree and then being in education to selling Mary Kay. How did that? I mean, what
do I sell Mary Kay? Do I?
Maybe that's the wrong word. That's the wrong word. You do not sell Mary Kay.
Yeah, that's what people think. That's what people think.
Yeah.
I imagine an invisible sign around every single person's neck that says "Make me feel important." And Mary Kay Ash, the woman, told us to do that. And she said, you should go out and use this tool that I've given to you to enrich women's lives. And if you help a woman feel good when she looks in the mirror, you're going to transition the inside of her. And when you transition, you're going to change the outlook of that family, because that woman's going to feel better and look better. Her husband's going to notice, her kids are going to notice, and then she's going to be encouraged. And then if you give her the gift of your business opportunity, you might actually empower that family and change their legacy. And so I really got that, because that's what happened to me. My consultant did that for me. And so I was like, I'm not going to be good at this. I'm not doing it. But I liked the idea of the discount, and I showed up for myself in training, and I kept going back, and these people were happy. And I thought they took drugs, honestly, because I'd never been around a bunch of women who genuinely were kind to each other anywhere, no matter, anywhere. So I mean, church too, I never anywhere. And I thought, I'm just going to keep going back until somebody talks about me. It didn't happen. And so I bought into the culture of the company, and I always tell people, if you're going to hang out with us, it is a cult. And people go, and I go, no, really, it's a culture. We foster that. And we have the ability to talk about our faith because the company was built on Christian ideals. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be Christian to be a Mary Kay person, right? So, but if you come into the company, you won't leave the same way you came in, even if if you decide not to continue.
Sure.
The quote I wrote down about you, John Maxwell's one of my mentors. Leadership isn't about titles, positions, or flow charts. It's about one life influencing another. And I think about your consistent influence with people here in Warsaw, in the community, it's just so real, and it's you haven't, you don't sell Mary Kay. You influence people.
I retract my statement.
One person at a time. So it just it's an amazing story to watch and to see and hear about, how the impact that you have in the community. So
Mary Kay is just the vehicle.
Yes,
that's all that is. Yeah.
No pun intended.
Yeah,
the pink Cadillac.
Yeah. I really think it's important for me to tell this one story so that we always say first you get into Mary Kay and then Mary Kay gets into you. Mm-hmm. And in 2003, I married my forever husband, and I was given students at the school that were expected to fail in a biology class because New York State had changed the requirements and decided every student should have a Regents examination. Well, I can find something great in every single student from the IEP, which I don't think is really an IEP. I think they have secret tools that the rest of us don't have, and they label them IEP. I don't know why they do that. But anyway, so I was given students that were expected to not make it through the Regents, and they gave them to me in a 2-year biology class. And I remember I had a colleague, and he was like, well, I'm glad you're teaching those kids. And I was like, totally turned off by that. And then I thought, here comes Rocky Balboa, like here he comes. And
It's
so
the eye of the tiger.
exactly.
It's
And I was
true.
like, oh no, we're going to show you, like, we might not be the smartest,
Sorry,
Mario,
sorry. She's getting me going. I just can't help myself.
I know, it's so true. And so these kids, mostly boys, to this day, they are my inspiration because I told them from the get-go, this is what I was told about you. And I don't think you should ever be okay with that. I don't care if you are 13 or you are 103. You have something of value to offer this world. It's in development right now. You're going to go do something great. It's going to make way more money than I'm ever going to see as a teacher. And they would question, like, why do you talk to us like that? Nobody ever talks to us like that. And I was like, it's true. Like, I can tell you from my own life experience, And so I say, here's the deal. We're not going to prove them right. We're going to get you all through that test. And I'm deathly afraid to earn a free car and marry Kay, but I know it's what I should be doing. And I don't think I can do it. And you don't think you can get through this test. So together we will do this. You'll come after me and I'll come after you and we'll do this together. And so some of them did a little bit of time in jail, and we did some visitation at jail during that time. And we got to the exam time, and I was progressing in my business, but not really at the level that I needed to be. And we got to the point where the exam came, and that year, Mary Kay, I was really growing my business big, but that year, what happened is they gave them a bump. They could pass the Regents with a 55 or higher one time. Well, all those kids got a 65 or above, except for one, got a 58. And that kid, I had champion New York State wrestlers in that class. So I knew they could do it. They just were struggling academically. And so they all got through it. And I said, I knew you could do it. I knew you could. And imagine a bunch of 15 to 17-year-olds staring at you, boys, going, thanks. Where's your car? And I said, wow. It's coming. They said, yeah, you said that. And I said, I'm getting it. And they said, we don't believe you. And that was it. That was my why to move. And I said, I can't let these kids down. I can't do this. And they said, yeah, when? And I said, by the time you graduate. And the power of your mind and what is happening behind the scenes, I was terrified about the car, but I was not terrified about the work. So I had to break that bigger goal down into smaller chunks and say, okay, what do I have to do today? What's the weekly goal? And then how will that accumulate into the total goal, right? So I said to God, I don't want to know I'm earning the car. I'm just going to do the work and just tap me on the shoulder when I earn it. So it's April. I'm a newlywed. I think I've started car qualification in March. I get a pack in the mail, and the packet says, choose cash or choose the car. What do you want? And I said, what the heck is this? So I called the company. I was so sick. My husband's like, don't get off the couch. You are so sick. Don't make a phone call. Don't do anything. You're not taking care of yourself. Rest. So I was like, well, I could call the company. So I called the company. I said to the girl, what is this packet? It's so presumptuous of you for you to say, like, I'm earning the car. Like, I'm terrified of this. And I said, I'm in month 2 out of 4 months. Why would you send this to me? And she said, what are you talking about? She said, you're in the last 2 weeks of your car qualification and $600 away. You mean to tell me you don't know that? I said, what? And she started screaming, oh my gosh, this girl does not know she earned a car. And I was like, see, what you feed your mind is so true. And so I had started car qualification in January, and I was getting these papers from the company, but I didn't know what they were. So I thought they were important. I hole punched them and put them in a binder, but I never read them. I didn't know what they were. Kept my head down, kept my blinders on, just kept going. And do you know, we finished that car. It takes 8 weeks. It came into McClurg Chevrolet in Perry on graduation day.
Oh, wow.
I drove that car to Letchworth Central School, parked it outside the greenhouse. Of course, everybody knew we were earning it. It was a red Pontiac Grand Am with a spoiler on it. I never had a new car. I had a Dodge Aries K car, And so the principal came by. It's graduation. I go, Tom, he was the best principal ever. I'll just tell you, Tom Kelleher, if you don't know that man, he was like me to his staff and his students. He would write you notes saying, I caught you doing something great. He was amazing. And so anyway, sure enough, he goes, Laura, what are you doing? I go, look. He goes, you got that car? I said, I got that car. He said, wow, that's so cool. You said you would, right? And then this kid comes down the hall, the one with the 58. And he goes, what are you doing, Mrs. DeBadts? I said, come here, look out the door. And he looks out the door and he does this thing and he goes, is that? I said, it is. He goes, throws his arms around me, senior 17, 18-year-old kid, throws his arms around me, grabs onto me so tight, hugs me. And he said, you did it. You really did. I said, go spread the word now. So he's walking down the hall with this kid I didn't know. And he goes, dude, who was that? And he goes, that was my teacher. Makes me so emotional. And he goes, dude, you hugged your teacher? He said, I'm so proud of her.
Oh.
Well,
those are the moments. Those are the moments. So,
and now they're all adults, and I get to substitute at the school, and I got their kids now. So,
oh wow.
Anyway,
wow.
yeah,
That's
fantastic. It's full circle. So, it's like in and out of the school. Let's just make a holistic difference here.
Sure.
School doesn't define who we are,
Yeah.
but there are moments that we can have victories or failures that can help define where we're going. So.
Yeah.
Can you say a little bit more, because the essence of what you're saying is what you're putting out there, the words that are coming out of your mouth are planting lots of seeds. Can you talk a little bit more about where the onus of that came from? Was that a learned thing, or was there a Laura in your life who did that for you?
Probably many. Probably many people. I did learn later of many people praying for me that I didn't know were praying for me. Mentors are essential in life and everything that we do. Even now in business, now I raise up Mary Kay women, right? So we've had about 85 women in 13 states that I coach and train. In fact, I'm meeting with one right after this. She was like, I'm a little discouraged. I said, I will get back to you after the podcast, And so I would say we need to process what we're thinking in a healthy way to someone who'll listen to us. And so how do I know that was part of my journey? Probably Grandma witnessed it to me. Grandma didn't leave the house very much because they had one car and she didn't want to total the car, and Grandpa was meticulous. So when I came home from school, I walked uphill both ways in the snow. True story.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I got home and she'd say, go put your play clothes on. And I say, okay, Graham, and because they lived upstairs and Mom and I were downstairs, 2-family house. And I say, what do you need? And she'd say, let's just use a different name, Mrs. Solomon. Mrs. Solomon needs these things. And she'd hand me a brown paper bag, fold it over, and she'd say, you got to bring these up to Mrs. Solomon. And I'd say, okay, waiting for her to tell me the value of what I was carrying, right? So I got to go let's say about a mile. So I walked home, and now I'm walking another mile up to Mrs. Solomon's house, rang the doorbell, across from the church that I went to in high school. And she'd say, oh, Laura, come on in. And she was an older lady. And my grandmother was smart. She knew I needed somebody. She couldn't give it to me because my parents were divorced and she didn't know what to do with that. But she knew she could use her phone to encourage others. I watched it every day of my life with her. And so, I went in there and Mrs. Solomon would say, just sit down. And Mrs. Solomon would pull out some tea and a little cookie or something. And we would just talk. Mrs. Solomon didn't have any skin in the game. I didn't need to worry about it because I could just be me. Mm-hmm. And so here I was. My grandma was making sure Mrs. Solomon felt valued and wasn't lonely. And I was getting encouraged because things were hard in middle school and high school,
Mm-hmm.
And finally I said to Mrs. Solomon, what's in the bag? And she said, magazines. And so I know for sure now the value of that when I look at people, when I go to facial people, and an older woman who's 80 who doesn't really need cosmetics, right? But she needs encouragement.
Sure.
She's not done living yet. And so if I can grab a kid and I can say, here, go visit such and such, take this for me, that maybe there could be an unwavering bond that was fostered. And that's part of my dream for this community, to be perfectly honest with you. It's kind of appalling to me that we have no community center for our kids. And we know that grandparents reading to kids is helpful, and parents are busy working. And why we don't have these resources in our community, I don't know. When I had them in 1975, so that's my legacy for Wyoming County, New York, is that by the time I leave this planet, I am praying and believing that community center will be built somehow.
What would that look like to you? What would a community center look like?
I manifest this. So, it would include a recreational space.
Okay.
Because I have very clearly defined, thanks to my youngest born child, that it's important to use your muscles so you don't get mad and hold on to it unnecessarily. It's a healthy release to lift weights, to play sports, to run, to do all those things. He ran a little bit next to the pink Cadillac, like a lot. He taught me a lot. So there'd be a recreational piece.
Okay.
There would be a place for tutoring. There would be a place for playing games, just board games, interaction, connection. I do think that there would be a space for maybe some virtual gaming, some team gaming of some sort. I want to be able to offer connection, even if it means connection to our YMCA, connection to swim lessons. I was a lifeguard. It changed my life. We can teach kids how to be leaders before they are. It would also include busing. There'd be transportation. We maybe have more poverty than they do in the city because there's no way for our kids to get to the resources that are available. In the city, they walk or they hop on a city bus. They've got a church with a van that's going to transport them. So and of course there would be a place for confidence building. For sure. Right now I work with the Youth Bureau. I'm doing I've done this in the past as well, but I'm doing a program called Lift Your Head for 14 years old and up to teach them how to care for themselves on their face and in their head, to help build their confidence so they can stand a little taller when they interview for a job.
And where do you do that?
Youth Bureau sets up the location, but this summer it's in this, I think, is it Stars for Tomorrow? Something like that. It's the summer free programming that the Youth Bureau does with Kelly Nickerson, and our program's going to be in the American Legion this year. It's at the end of July.
Tell us a little bit. I don't hear a lot about the Youth Bureau, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you don't?
I don't know. So, and if I don't, maybe others don't as well. So how do we get connected with that, and what services do they offer? Because I think that's important.
I can tell you what I know, Rod.
Okay.
All right. So, and Al might be able to bridge the gap on some of it too, because he's so involved in youth programming. So, the Youth Bureau is a county youth bureau. It's located right over by the DMV and the Office of the Aging. They share the same space. They have 2 or 3 workers that have specific programming. So the Youth Bureau does the, I can't remember the exact name of it, so I apologize, but Youth Court. It's Youth Court. So they do the Youth Court. I was going to say it's court related. They do the Youth Court, which is referrals for behavioral issues from the school, and then they raise up these kids who learn what the legal system looks like and how to create peer support to kids who are struggling. They do this program where they send home a flyer at the end of the school year. It goes into all the backpacks.
Okay.
And high school tends to be a little more challenging because they're kind of tuning out at that point. So it would be intentional, but there's a flyer with multiple programs on it. And it just so happens that Kelly Nickerson's in charge of that particular part. So she sets up people to run programs. And kids sign up, and there's a cutoff on how many can attend, and there's a whole variety of them. So lots of people in our community donate their time to do that. Sometimes you can get paid to do it depending on what it is. They also do, like, I'm so excited. I see this is another thing, like, because of the connections, I can do this, but Youth Leadership Academy, which is a new academy that started, and you're part of that, Rod, which we're super excited about. And so the ag teacher, FFA teacher, and me just gets really excited. So I was the opening speaker. I'll be the closing speaker for that group of kids. They apply through a program at the end of the year to apply for next year. And then they get pulled out of school throughout the year for visitations to job opportunities throughout the county to expose them to what they could be doing with their life when they graduate or after college, and what's available in Wyoming County if they want to stay here and be part of that for the rest of their life if they want to. So she runs that, and that's pretty exciting. I know you do cool. Scholarships. Yeah.
Cool. So that is interesting. So how do we get that information? Do they send that home?
No. Most of the time, from what I can tell, it's making its way in the high school level, into the guidance office. Nobody's doing a song and pony show to advertise it. Youth Bureau will tell you what's going on. So I think they sometimes put it on the site. So if you're not looking for it, you might not hear it.
Okay.
But definitely call. There are 3 workers. There's also 2 other girls that work with Kelly, but they have different programs that they work on. And I think it might be like birth to like 5, and then there's another worker that works with them, say, on a child age program, and Kelly tends to do a lot of the high school stuff.
That's great.
She also does the Safe Harbor stuff. You know about that?
I do not.
Okay, Safe Harbor is the human trafficking issue that we're having, and Safe Harbor is what is mandated through New York State. And so each year Kelly does a free workshop for anybody that wants to attend. It doesn't just have to be if you're a social worker, because being informed is important. I did that this year. She had a well-known survivor of trafficking from the Grand Island area come to Breezy Hill Barn and give her testimony of what it was like to go through that human trafficking. And she brought another one from Arcade last year, a gentleman who was trafficked, and making us aware that right here in our little metropolis that it's happening, and how important it is to be aware.
Yeah, I met the kid from Arcade. I was at that.
This is that's the first time I've ever heard of that. So I'm just wondering how the communication gets to the parents to encourage the kids to get involved.
Yeah.
I think that's important stuff.
Yeah,
definitely.
it is. I don't have the full answer. I do know that the programs at the end of the school year, they should be going home now.
Okay.
She's already made the flyer.
Yeah.
But they usually in the elementary go home in their backpacks.
Okay.
And I don't know what happened at the high school level, but I've been subbing at Warsaw, and I got a big mouth. So I've been telling all the teens what I'm doing, so that they can be part of it. So
that's cool. Speaking of teens, speaking of kids, and then I know Al has some more questions for you. Let's talk about family a little bit. And I know we're pressed on time here. So you, let's talk. Your husband. Introduce us to your husband.
My husband?
Yes.
My wonderful husband, Eric. Yes.
Eric. Okay.
Yes, we've been married. It'll be 22 years this year.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Wow. Well, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. I know that's always kind of a fun thing.
Yeah.
He is a very independent thinker, and he's an entrepreneur, and he's the reason we have earned 13 cars since I decided to come home with our children that were born 14 months apart, our 2 youngest. And so he always thinks like an entrepreneur, so he's very creative. And so he really is the author behind Laura getting where she needed to go, because he would say things to me that I didn't want to hear. And then, I came home from teaching full time because of him. So that was great. And that's a compliment to him, because I'm a just grin and bear it kind of person. And he was like, just release. I know you can do it. Just go. And so I'm very grateful for that.
Awesome. And he does motocross? Is that right?
Yeah.
That's something unique.
Yeah, he was a pro motocrosser for a while, actually.
That's cool.
As an independent. He didn't have a Honda ride or a Kawasaki ride. they have a special name for that that's missing at this moment, but I'll get back to it. And so anyway, he's still to his love. He's about to start the vet class. He's going to start riding again. So
Cool.
It brings him some great joy, and it gave him something to do with all 4 of our boys, which has been really great. And so Eric's quite talented. He's a self-learn person. He can learn whatever needs to be learned and do it. If you told him he couldn't do it, he would prove you wrong every time.
He has that engineering mind and mechanic,
Totally.
putting things
Totally.
together.
And
taking things
struggled
apart,
in
but
school.
Yeah.
He
so-
almost didn't graduate because of math, and his dad was a math teacher. So
And I can see you guys being kind of opposite in your personalities, right?
Oh yeah, very much so. Yeah, complimentary though.
Yes.
Yeah, we met on Match.com. So
Really?
yeah, when
No kidding.
it was like it couldn't have been barely a year old. So yeah, I put on there positive, enthusiastic woman looking for the best in life with a strong faith, so I could make my boundaries very clear with no photograph, and he agreed to have conversation anyway.
That's great.
Yeah, it was wonderful. And the first thing he asked me was, "Tell me more about your faith." So
That's great. And you said 4 kids?
yeah, 4 boys.
Cool. Names?
RJ is 32, coming
Okay.
up on 33. Connor
Wow.
is 25. Jacob is 19, and Daniel is 18.
About to graduate.
Yeah. No, he did.
Oh, he did graduate. already.
Yeah.
Okay,
So all
that's
your
it.
kids
Yeah.
are graduated?
Yeah, so we had
Wow.
a banner year last year.
That's
We
right.
launched the 2 youngest, and the grandmas and the grandpas made their way to heaven, and I went, "What is going on
Wow.
here?" So my husband's mom is still with us, my mother-in-law is still with us, and my dad, who has now been regularly calling me and telling me, he's going to come and torment us for a couple weeks at a time. So
Got it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Very good.
And for the last decade, you've had no corn in your life.
no corn. You saw that.
I did.
You
I
did that, yeah.
I told you I was stalking
You gotta share it. No
it
corn.
told-
What it-
no
what-
corn. I mean, I have corn in my
her
life, but
husband, yeah, not the joking corn. But her husband's allergic to corn.
yeah,
Or-
So my husband
Okay.
actually about 20, I want to say he is 12 years ago, he was hospitalized for an entire week. He had a big birthday, and we went to the Giants Stadium for a Supercross event. I was so excited. He had a Philly cheesesteak and spent the next 7 days in the hospital.
Wow.
With a closed small intestine. And so during that time, it was called a mystery illness. And I'm just going to talk about your resources. I said, nope, this is entrepreneurship. You know this very well. When you network and you meet with people, I said, oh, no, it's not a mystery illness. Normal medicine will tell you it's a mystery illness because
Right.
they can't figure it out. But we're going to go see our alternative allergist who lives right up the street from me and is an amazing woman, and that's Kristen Felix. And she, I knew, was helping people with things that regular doctors weren't, because she's so thorough. And so we went there, and she helped us to figure out that he has all the nightshades: eggplant, tomato, peppers, black pepper, corn, and beef. So all of
Wow.
those things pretty much got removed from our diet as a family. We consume them when he's not there because it's not nice to just be like,
Yeah.
here, would you like a burger? Sorry,
Yeah.
you can't have one. So we've been living corn, and now we're seeing 12 years later, if you look at the research, all the additives into the things that are not farm to table are filled with, and I'm an agriculturalist, so
yeah,
just
yeah.
know that my heart breaks for my farmer friends in this way, but it's really not their fault. It's the change in the genetic makeup of stuff, and
Yeah.
it's in everything. And so for us, it's not a fit. Maybe for others they can do it, but for us, we avoid it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've built this community for the last 25 years.
That's a lot of credit, Al.
Of not Wyoming County. Your community of people
Yeah.
through Mary Kay, through church,
Yeah.
through your family.
Yeah.
Is there where do you see that going over the next 3 to 5 years? What will that look like 5 years from now? Besides having your community center.
Wow, that's like if the sky is open. Truthfully, I want to develop more car drivers, and I want to develop more leaders in my company. That's my dream, right? Like I want people to have what I have. There's no limit on that, believe it or not. People think, well, there's too many of you. There's not. There's not too many of us, I promise, especially with the virtual world. We have no territories. So if I had to say that, it would make me happy to see kids. I don't have the power to do this, but my prayer is that we see our suicide numbers decrease, that empowerment goes up, that I see service happening, that everybody's helping their neighbor instead of hoping that some organization's going to do the work for them. That people will just step out of their homes and just see a need and fill the need and believe they can, believe they have something to offer, and not just call looking for answers, but to be willing to be the answer, be the change. That's my goal for my community. Is it's not just something that Laura has, it's something that I want to duplicate. It's not, what good is it if it's for me? It's not for me. My speaking's not for me. My teaching's not for me. It's for the body, right? It's for the people. It's for the community. It's for everybody else. I'm not rich unless I can see it being used some other way. What good is it?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And how do you see our community now? You want to see those things happen. How do you see it right now compared to your vision?
Well, first of all, I love living here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, there's always things, right? There's always things. I always refer to myself as, like, if you watch the movies, I'm that lady in the hood, the mom that comes out with her finger in her hand and like is yelling at the whole neighborhood, right? So before I'm coming here, the lady across the street is in my neighbor's driveway and she's taking photographs of their house. And I know that they don't know that's happening. So I said hello to her, right? So back to how do you see your community? And then she's walking around. So I'm like, I'm not going down to the podcast until I find out what's happening here. So I go over and I say, hi, I'm Laura. And she introduces herself and she tells me she's with an insurance company that's just updating, the homeowner's insurance. I'm like, she's like, so if you see your neighbor, let them know. Well, I believe it takes our community, and I believe that our community is rich in a lot of things. And I always taught my kids the most important people are the janitors and the secretaries. They run the world. Like, so you don't know who's around you. So my community is rich in generosity, in kindness. I think the YMCA is testament to how cool our community is, because I was told we really shouldn't have a YMCA. Our community is not big enough to support a YMCA. And yet here it is, 20 some years later. So I think we have the foundation. We just need to show people that what they are doing has value. And we get caught up in our current circumstances, and we don't think when we get up out of bed in the morning about how is what I'm doing today going to impact my life at the end of the week in a positive way. What's the one thing that I can do today that makes a difference? So my mantra is imperfect action is better than perfect procrastination. Just do one thing today, even if you don't do it perfectly. And I promise those efforts will multiply over time. So our community has the foundation we need in order to improve upon those things.
Say that again. Imperfect
action is better than perfect procrastination.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. I have one last question, if you'll bear with me. And it's a question I love to ask everybody is, so if Laura today could go and talk to that Laura 25 years ago or as you're coming out of Cornell, and you could tell her one thing about life, leadership, your purpose, what would you share that you know now that you wish you knew then?
What other people think of me is none of my business.
There you go.
Yep. It's run your own race. This very speaking voice that's being used right now is the very thing I was picked on for as a child. You're too loud. You're too goofy. You laugh too loud. You got to quiet down. Nobody wants to listen to what you have to say. And then that very gift that I thought was a curse became the very thing that God used to make all of those things you shared today possible. It was a willingness to change my mindset and focus on what could be done. And I would tell her, don't stay in discouragement. It's not what's meant for your life. Like, just head in the direction you're supposed to go, and it'll all unfold. So. And
here you are. Clearly that worked.
Yeah. And I feel rich. And I don't mean the money kind. Yeah. I feel like I live a rich life. And I think that's the piece that people don't realize when they're pursuing the dollar, is that it's no matter how much you have or you don't have, it won't get you where you want to go. It's so much more than that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
To that point, my last John Maxwell quote for today is, he says, "Success is when I add value to myself. Significance is when I add value to others."
Mm-hmm.
And clearly, you've had a significant impact in everyone you touch. So, thank you
I
for
could
that.
only hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we thank you, Laura, for being part of this and taking time out and joining us. And we thank you for what you've done in the community here.
Yeah. Thank you. I feel the same. I do want to finish by saying to you, Rod, I have been attending Vertical Cafe coffee experiences since you were in that tiny little place in Perry.
Oh, yeah.
And so
likewise,
as much, you too? Yeah. In Rick Hauser's building movement,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
And so most people might only know of this, but
Yeah.
I remember traveling because of my Mary Kay, and I look for coffee shops, and
Sure.
I had heard that you had started, and I was like, well, that sounds like a great place to go. Let's go there.
Yeah.
So thank you for enriching each community that you've been
Yeah.
a part of too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Vertical's great. There's some amazing looking cinnamon rolls out there that I've been thinking about the entire conversation.
the whole time.
So, well, no. So thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Al, for joining us today and being
Absolutely.
our guest co-host.
I love having the opportunity to be a guest co-host
Yeah.
and learn more about folks in the community.
Yeah,
So-
and tell us what you guys think about Al. Give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
For sure.
Wow.
I'm just kidding.
Wow.
For sure. Mario,
Wow.
Nathan Lane, or
Nathan-
Luigi. Which
Yeah,
one?
yeah. It just,
Mario, Nathan Lane, or Luigi. Yeah. If you don't know Al, honestly, some people might not know Al.
Yeah.
If you don't know Al, you're missing out because he's a
Absolutely.
quiet movement. You know, he plays in similar sandboxes.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
with me. This is
Nicely,
great.
too,
Yeah.
right?
yes, absolutely. I'm not a throw sand in your face person.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you for the
Thanks.
opportunity.
Welcome to the Vertical Cafe podcast, where community connects through coffee and conversation.